Welcome to From Dark to Light, the podcast where we uncover stories of resilience, healing, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. So let's get to it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome from Dark to Light. I am Julie Crawford. I'm actually not your host. I have the host here on the other line. This is Julie Crawford, my mother. She's actually the creator and the real true host of From Dark to Light. If you want to say hi, how are you doing?
Hey, honey, how are you?
I'm really good. So obviously, this is a whole new thing that you started. Can you tell me a little bit about what is From Dark to Light, why you started this, who you plan on having this show, what started your interest in this? Where'd this come from?
Ooh, so many questions. Years ago, when my mom was alive, Grammy was alive, she went through a lot. And I remember her always saying to me that her life meant the dark. Her name was Maureen, and she just believed her life meant the dark. And she had gone through so much stuff, from abuse as a child to having a child at 15 and getting married at 16 and losing her leg and her child at 17. Woke up to find out that the baby had already been buried. And she, at that point, losing a child, she never felt like anybody loved her truly until she had that baby, Chrissy. And so, I watched her suffer throughout most of her life and keep going. But she used to constantly say how someday she wanted to write a book called The Dark. And, she has since passed, and I just kind of wanted to start something that was a continuation of her. She believed that her life meant the dark, but I do feel that so many things, light, came out of her. And she didn't get to really see it all, but she did get to see, she had grandkids like you, and my sister and I are doing well and in loving relationships and all that kind of stuff. So I just feel like I wanted to take her story and then have other people also share their stories, because I saw how hard the suffering was for her, but she kept going. And I've always been amazed at people like her who have been through so much and yet choose to keep going. I just want this podcast to be something where people can go to it, listen to it, and even though they may not be going through exactly what the guests are going through or been through, they can at least take something from there and listen and say, wow, if they've been through that and they've chosen to keep going, I can too.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. That's really, really cool. Obviously, I know that Grammy was a big inspiration. So that kind of made me want to ask, being raised by someone who, like you said, struggled with so much darkness and struggle with a loss of their firstborn, as well as losing their leg. I mean, how do you feel that changed you in your upbringing and just being raised from a kid, your perspective on the world, and maybe the empathy that gives you towards others? Or I guess, how do you feel that has kind of
Oh,
made
I
you, changed your perspective on life and just,
oh, I think it changed uh the trajectory of my life would be different had I not had that experience. Because growing up from a very young age, I mean, I was told by my aunt how my brother and I, we were twins, and at 1 year old she came to visit, and we were carrying our potty seats around, you know, and we were very independent from a very young age, because my mom only had one leg, she didn't use prosthetics, and so she had twins, and she could only hold one of us at a time, and she did hold one of us while she was walking, and
hmm
all of that. She was very strong, but it shaped me because I saw the suffering that my father put her through, going to domestic violence shelters and not having electricity sometimes, or food, or running water, and us having to be dispersed to different family members' houses. And I think that seeing her sad, I always felt this really intense need to protect her and try to always be a good girl. I definitely had that, like, I was a good girl, wasn't I, mommy? My sister
hmm
still to this day hates that, because when she and my brother would fight, I would say that. I always was hyper vigilant and sensitive to her needs and making her happy, because she was always suffering. But it gave me so much perspective on life, because when I went on to, adulthood, I worked in social work and I had empathy and compassion for these people in these circumstances. Um, and it made me a very empathetic person. It kind of guided
Hmm.
my life. I went into social work and then school counseling, and fortunately was able to be a stay-at-home mom. But I really was shaped by my early childhood experiences, and I can identify with so many people and their circumstances because of it. So I'm grateful
Wow.
for it, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess let's dive a little bit more into the audience behind, this podcast. Who should be listening to this? What would you say to the people that are listening that might feel, well, this isn't, I don't need this, or maybe that's
Mhm.
not something that I can relate to. I have it so much better, or, what would you say
Yeah.
to someone who might feel that way
Well,
when they're hearing the story?
that's wonderful. Awesome. Like that you don't have these struggles. But I do believe a majority of people are struggling with something. And it doesn't have to be the death of a child or a spouse or an addiction. But hearing people's stories who have been through really significant loss and traumas, and still thrived and chose to get help, or take that first step, this could help someone they know. It's connecting with other people, it's listening to people's stories and showing empathy, and learning, oh wow, there are some really amazing people in the world, and I may not be going through what they're going through, but I can learn from them regardless.
Yeah. No, I like that, and I agree. I think, like you said, everyone is kind of going through their own stuff. Everyone's dealing with life at their own pace, and no, that's really cool. So going back to the name From Dark to Light, I know you had mentioned Grammy. She wanted to write a book called
Mhm.
Into the Dark or From the Dark.
Mhm.
I think the most important part is, everyone deals with hardship, but let's talk more on the light part and the importance of fighting through. So I guess explain a little bit more as to where the name comes from.
Well, for me, when I visualize the dark, it really for me, I visualize um, loneliness
Mm.
and shame, uh, despair, and then in the opposite of that, I feel like is peace. Light for me is peace. It doesn't mean, and this is what I'm learning from these guests, is that it doesn't mean that your life every day is going to be amazing when you choose to walk into the light. It's taking that first step, or a step today. It is taking a step to get out of whatever it is you're going through today. And maybe tomorrow is going to be rough, but
Mhm.
you continue to take that next step. And for me, light is really just peace. And when you get into the light, and when you expose whatever you're going through, and you share it with other people, you reduce the shame that's associated with it. One of
Yeah.
my biggest role models in life is Oprah. And I really believe, and she talks all the time about shame. And when you hold it, actually, that's where the burden is. And
Mm.
but once you release it, then it's freeing to you. And so for
Yeah.
me, light means peace. And it may not mean peace every day, but it's peace in that moment. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping people get from it, is some form of peace when they do decide to get help or make that next step.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Um, I know you had talked a little bit about Grammy, but I'm just curious. Can you tell a little bit more about, I guess, her childhood? You mentioned a little bit about yours, um, but what were some of the hardships you mentioned? The loss of a child and the loss of a leg. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that as to how she lost those two things possibly, and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that?
So she was one of five kids, and she was abused physically by her father and her brother, and severely abused. It wasn't like, oh, once in a while she gets smacked around or anything. She was really abused pretty badly, torn out of school dances by her hair, kicking and screaming. Everyone was afraid of my uncle in the household, just really, really violent upbringing. And um, she fell in love with somebody when she was 13, 14 years old. And he was the first one she felt, somebody connected with her, and got pregnant the first time they had sex, didn't even know it got her pregnant, and hid the pregnancy because she was afraid she was going to be killed and by my grandfather, my uncle. And the school nurse told her parents when she was about, I think, 7 months pregnant, and her parents didn't even know. And the school nurse went to the house with the police because everyone knew he was abusive, and she was sent to an unwed mother's home. She was there for a few weeks, but she was refusing to eat, and so she was sent home. And anytime anyone come to visit, she was sent into the basement because she was like
Oh
a
my
shame to the
God.
family. And my grandparents were planning on putting the baby up for adoption. My mom did not have a choice in the matter, and so when the baby was born, she wasn't allowed to hold her or anything like that. But fortunately, my grandparents, they fell in love with the baby, and they told my mom on one condition that she could keep the baby, and it was if she never saw the baby's father again. Um, it happened to be that the day she was going in to have the baby, people didn't really know she was pregnant. She wasn't showing much, um, which is odd, but apparently your body, like kind of in this fight or flight mode, the baby grew back towards her spine. So she actually wasn't showing much, but she met my father the day she was giving birth, actually. And lo and behold, um, got married at 16 to my father, and they were in a terrible car accident when she was 17. They were moving back from out of state. He was drafting behind an 18-wheeler who had pulled off the side of the road, and um, another one had pulled off to the side of the road, and he crashed into it. And my mother, the cab of their truck came down where the baby was sleeping because car seats weren't a thing back then. And she was killed instantly. Her skull was crushed. And then my mom was in the truck. They couldn't get her out for a while, and uh, almost lost her life, and fought for it, and woke
Wow.
up a few weeks later from a coma and found that her daughter had been buried and her leg was amputated. So
Wow.
she spent her 18th birthday in the hospital, and, you know, grieved for the next year or so. And my father was abusive. He would take her crutches away sometimes when she wanted to get away, and went on to have more kids when she was told not to, or she couldn't. Had my brother, my sister, and then twins. So, the trajectory of that, having so much trauma as a child, and then going on to have more children when you're not a fully formed adult yourself,
Mm-hmm.
with so much um, hurt that never was dealt with on both sides. My father
Mm-hmm.
never dealt with what happened with the accident, and he just became an alcoholic. And, um, you know, things went on, just got worse from there.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately for her, she just felt like she wasn't meant to have a good life. And it wasn't until she had a brain aneurysm when I was 8. And when she finally did recover, which she only had a 2% chance of living, she decided to get a divorce and took
Wow.
control of her life, which was the first time she had ever done that. She just thought that nobody would want her with 3 kids and one leg. That
Yeah.
was the story she told herself, that nobody would want her. Um, but she did go on to marry an amazing man. Papa, my stepdad, but I refer to as my dad,
Mm-hmm.
because for those 12 years, that I would say about 12 years, life was really good. It was really good. So she
Yeah.
finally was able to have some peace, which she deserved.
Mm-hmm. That's really awesome. And that was going to be my next question then, kind of coming from that story. Um, what do you wish that Grammy would have found in herself?
I wish she knew her worth at the
Mhm.
time. I wish she would have left my father many, many years before she did, um, because she didn't know her worth, or she didn't believe that someone else would love her because of her situation and with her kids. And finally, when she did believe in herself and take that step, she did find love. And
Hmm.
I think so many people think, well, this is just how my life is. This is just how it is. But it doesn't have to be. You know,
Yeah.
when she decided to take control of her life and she built a business and was remarried and really loved life for a while, that could have happened sooner. You know, you
Hmm.
only get one life. And I feel like she suffered for so much of it because of the story she told herself.
Yeah. How do you choose your guests? What goes into, um, refining something like this?
My biggest thing is I hope that everything in every story is relatable on some level. You
Hmm.
know, I think connection is something that we're missing as a society. And I want people to feel connected to the story or to the person and maybe see themselves in that person. And again, it doesn't have to be their story has to match up. It's just like, wow, okay, I can do this. Yes,
Hmm.
I can do this. Um, and just really connecting and relating. And how I'm finding these guests is really just having the courage to ask. I feel like I'm scared doing this podcast. Like, I am scared.
Yeah.
Every time I interview someone, I feel like I'm going to throw up because I want to do them right. Like, it's really a big deal for people to share themselves. And then it's also scary to be judged by other people. I'm scared because I feel like people are going to judge me if I do a bad job or if this podcast isn't good, but I'm still doing it. You know, it's like stepping out and doing something even when you feel scared,
Hmm.
even when you feel like you're going to throw up. Um, and I'm just learning, I'm connecting with people. And that's what I was lacking. You know, I do real estate investing and sit in the computer all day like you. It's like, I need connection with people. I
Yeah.
want to reach out to guests and hear their stories. I've always been fascinated about people's stories and resilience and inspired by other people. You know,
Hmm.
I take a little bit from each guest and think, wow, okay, like Console, one of the guests that we have on here. I mean, she went through a genocide and lost her family, and she's so kind and sweet and loving and has no anger or heart, like hurt. I mean, she's hurt, but she doesn't put that on other people. You know, people say hurt people
Yeah.
hurt people. She does not do that. So when I'm talking to a telemarketer or somebody else, I'm trying to be so nice because I'm trying to pull from her, right? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
my own issues with my father. I recently decided I'm gonna, instead of just having these negative feelings, I'm just gonna say, I pray he gets whatever he needs. Like,
Hmm.
that's where I'm at now. It's releasing it, and I'm learning from each guest what I can take from them to
Yeah.
better my own life.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I know you had mentioned the word resilience. I guess what have you learned about, I guess, in your term of resilience? What does that mean for you? And then not just for yourself, but maybe the people you're interviewing, what does that look like
Mhm.
for them? Is there a
Mhm.
common um element that you found in regards to that? Or, because
You
I think
know,
a lot of people when they're really struggling, they just feel so weak. They don't
yeah.
feel resilient at all.
Hmm.
I guess, is
Yeah,
there
I
a
think the common theme is that they are choosing to keep going.
Mhm.
And for some, it's their faith that helps them keep going. For others, it's their children. For others, it's just this inner drive to want to better their life.
Yeah.
It's a mindset for some. I mean, it varies. Everybody has their own thing, but they all have this same will that they are not going to be broken by their situation. Yes, they
Yeah.
may break down and they might have really hard days, of course, still. Um, but they choose to d- cry, get it out, and then move on, move forward, you
Yeah.
know, in that next moment. Because some of them, it's moment by moment, it's minute by minute, especially with grief and loss. And it's 1 minute at a time, then 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a
Mhm.
time. And I think that we all can learn something from their resilience for
Yeah.
our own. Mhm.
That's cool. Um, I guess what's one message you'd wanna leave with everyone who's listening right now? If you could say one One message. That's it. Everything else gets taken away. What would you want people to know? What would you want people to hear?
That there's hope, no matter what your circumstances, no matter what your situation is. There is somebody who wants to help you. There's a program. There is a way,
Hmm.
and you just have to step out of that dark place that you're in and ask for help.
You have to
That's
want to get out of that dark place.
I just want people to know there is hope. They
Hmm.
can get better. They can get help. It is accessible to them. They just can't give up.
Yeah,
So,
that's cool. If last question. If Grammy was, here and can hear this right now, what do you think that she would say to you?
I think she'd probably say, "Good job, poopers." That
Yeah.
was my nickname. um, it's an awful nickname, but she was the
That's
only one that called me that, and I can still hear her voice saying that.
yeah.
She was always very proud of me, and so I hope to continue to make her proud.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
Well, thank you, buddy, for interviewing me. I love you so much, and
Of
you're the
course. It's been
best.
a lot of fun. It's really cool getting to, hear in depth, your passion for this podcast and just wanting to help others. I think it's really special, and there's obviously so many people that this can affect and help, and there is a need.
Hmm.
So I think it's really, really, really special what you're doing, and
Thank
yeah, I love it. So thanks for
Well,
having me on, and thanks for letting me co-host here today. And
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I love you, and hopefully you'll be on again.
yep, hopefully
All
we'll see.
right. All right.
Mm,
Bye, babe.
bye.
Here on From Dark to Light, we believe that resilience isn't about pretending the darkness never happened. It's about learning to rise from it and letting our scars tell a story of strength. If today's episode spoke to you, I hope you'll share it with someone who may need encouragement on their own path. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. And as always, thank you for joining me in shining a light on the power of the human spirit. Until next time, I'm Julie Crawford, and this has been From Dark to Light.